Hello everyone, and welcome back to the channel. Today I'm going to be showing you something pretty sweet. So in this last test server, I mentioned this in my update video, the devs added in this cool little tool. I'm not really sure what to call it, we're just going to call it the target. And there it is. Basically what it does is that every time you shoot it, it leaves a mark where the bullet impacts. It also has a little red dot that is exactly where your barrel is pointing. It also gives you the exact distance that you're standing to the target. So I use this to do all sorts of data gathering for you guys. This is probably going to be a 3-part video. In this video we're going to be covering recoil, in the second one we'll be doing bullet drop, and in the third one we'll be doing handling. It's going to be a while until I get to that third one because I actually have not filmed it yet. But let me tell you guys, this stuff takes a long time to edit down every single image of recoil charts and to compile them together and adjust the color to make them look more presentable. It took a minute, so I hope you guys appreciate this. And I also hope you guys learned something, because I learned a lot about how recoil works in this game with this target. I had a pretty good idea how it functioned before, but now I'm able to really put my finger on exactly what's going on here. And if you've been a long-time player of the game, you probably noticed that recoil nowadays is a lot more horizontal and a lot more randomized. It used to be that most recoil would kind of just go up and to the right, and some guns went up and to the right more than others. Now there's a lot more horizontal play. Some guns bounce around a ton, some just go straight up like the Scar. And today we're going to be looking at all that. I do want to mention that every single chart that you're about to see was taken in a very scientific way. I shot 300 rounds on target, standing exactly 5 meters away from the exact same position each time. We're going to be going from the guns with the least relative recoil to the guns with the most. So that means we're starting with the MR5. So for those of you that are familiar with the MP5 before .2, I think, the update .2, you would know that it used to be a super laser beam. It is not like that anymore. It actually has a lot of horizontal recoil, and you can see here that it's very diagonal. The one thing that kind of sucks though is that the muzzle brake really doesn't seem to do anything. If anything, it just gives it a little bit less vertical recoil, but a little bit more horizontal recoil. That's my only guess, but you're fine to use it without one and be just as good as you would be with one. So next we have the UMR. The UMR has not very much vertical recoil. It also fires very slowly, so it's kind of known to be one of the easiest guns in the game to use, especially because it has very high damage against unarmored targets, so it melts right through bots. Without a compensator though, you're going to see that there's a lot of horizontal play here, and it has a respectable amount of vertical recoil, but it's nothing like an assault rifle. It's still pretty low. With a compensator though, it really does improve a lot. A UMR with a compensator is kind of scary. You'll see that the vast majority of the rounds land right on target. And, you know, I'm not controlling where the shots go. I'm literally, like, I've let go of my mouse for these tests. So without even controlling your recoil, your first 4 shots will land on target. Well, you know, 5 meters away, but still, you get the point. So, next we have the Facade, which has the lowest recoil out of any assault rifle, especially with a compensator. But it has still a decent amount of horizontal recoil, and it kind of just bounces around everywhere. You're going to see this with a lot of the Bullpup guns in this game. They kind of tend to bounce around, but they have very little vertical recoil overall. You'll see that as you get better and better compensators on, the whole pattern kind of just shrinks. It doesn't change all that much. I will say, a Facade with a red dot close range, if you're standing still, really can melt through people. It's just farther away that horizontal recoil can kind of be annoying. Because it also has very little recoil, you can use this like a UAG. I made a video on the UAG where I explained that you can basically use this to just tap with a hammer or a long-range scope. But yeah, I don't know how I feel about the Facade. I haven't made an actual standalone video on it yet. I plan on doing it because it's interesting. It's kind of just a UAG, but better, in my opinion, just slightly less recoil. I haven't done any handling data yet. It might handle worse, but we'll see when that video comes out, yeah? Next we have the UAG, and let's compare the two here. And you can see that they're pretty similar, except the UAG just has more vertical recoil and less horizontal recoil. So it won't bounce around as much, but even still, it's bouncing everywhere, especially without a compensator on. It really seems like what the compensator does is reduces horizontal recoil on the UAG specifically, more than vertical. But man, look at the M3 chart, look at that one recoil pattern just go way off and up to the left. I don't know what happened there, and I think that really does go to show that there's a lot of randomness here. So even if you've really got your recoil patterns down well, sometimes the gun just runs away to the left. You never really can know. Next we have the Scar. Now a lot of you guys know that the Scar is known for having basically no recoil. It is a laser beam. And while yeah, that's true, it actually does have a decent amount of vertical recoil. What makes it a laser beam really is that it has like no horizontal recoil at all. It just goes pretty much straight up. And when you get better and better compensators, it just shrinks down too. A Scar with an M3 compensator is insane. Seriously, it is probably the best assault rifle in the game. Next up we have the AR4, and it does have less vertical recoil than the Scar, but it does have a lot more horizontal recoil. So unlike the Scar, you can't really use an AR4 past 100 meters. With the Scar with an M3, you can literally just spray at targets 100 meters out, but with an AR4, you can't do that. And because of that, I think the AR4 is a better choice than the Scar for close range fighting because it shoots faster and it has less vertical recoil. And when you're so close, horizontal recoil just doesn't really matter. So, moving up, we have the AK mod. So, the AK mod is one of the most interesting guns that I experimented with. Without any compensators on, it does have a good amount of vertical and horizontal recoil. It does bounce around a lot. It's by no means uncontrollable. It's very good. And its stock recoil is still a lot better than some other guns we're going to talk about later. But something I noticed with the AK mod is that once you start putting compensators on, specifically in M2, the M1 compensator is good, but the M2 really does get its pattern to be a whole lot more consistent. And with the M3, I think the AK mod is actually on par with something like an AR4 or a Scar. Yeah, I'm serious, because I know the AK mod, at least last time I checked, has very good handling, so that can make it a serious close-range fighting weapon. Long range, not so much, but still, it's interesting to note. So next we have the AKSM. Now it's really important you know this is the SM and not the SU. They used to have almost the same recoil, I'm pretty sure they did, but now they're very different. The AKSM just kinda seems like an AK mod, but with a bit more vertical recoil and less horizontal, if that makes sense. And with the compensator, it's pretty decent. I just don't really understand why you'd ever use this over an AK mod. The AKSM does less damage, has more recoil, and it's only like 5k cheaper. So, not really sure why you'd use it. I like it, it's a cool gun, but definitely stick with the AKM. Now, next we have the Grom. Now, the Grom can't have any compensators on it, and even without a compensator, it has as much recoil as an AKM. But it does shoot faster, and it's shorter, so it's a little bit better for CQB, but it's really not that much different from an AKM. It really just does seem like a close quarters AKM, but with terrible handling. I guess we'll have to wait and see until the handling video comes out, and then we can really do an overview once I have all the data together, because right now all I have is bullet drop and recoil, and a basic idea from past experimenting what handling's like. But yeah, the Grom, not the best. I still love it. It's a fun gun to use. I like using the weird unique guns in Deadside because it confuses people when you shoot at them. They don't really know what's happening sometimes, but it's really not the best. Next we have the RPK. So this is the first gun we're talking about that has more than 30 rounds in its mag. So you do have to take that into consideration when we're looking at these charts, because I'm shooting 10 times more on top of the recoil that it would have if I only shot 30. I hope you guys understand what I'm saying here. But even still, it has some pretty high vertical recoil. You can cut it down pretty well with an M3 compensator. The M2s and M1s are also really good. They're pretty similar. The RPK, though, is one of the only AK platforms in Deadside that doesn't have very much horizontal recoil. It goes pretty much straight up and to the right, which, even though it does have a lot of vertical recoil, that makes it a lot easier to control. If you haven't used an RPK with an M3 compensator and a 75 round drum, you really should. It's a good time. Now, next we have the AKSU. So this is a very cheap, very common gun, so you'd expect it to have a lot of recoil. And it does have a lot of horizontal recoil, not very much vertical. The sad thing, though, about the AKSU is that the compensators kind of suck. I wouldn't even bother with an M1 compensator. Like, if I had one, I'd put it on, but I'm not gonna buy one. It's such a negligible difference, and Every compensator you put on just makes it have more and more horizontal recoil, and you guys can see that in this chart. The pattern just starts to get fatter and fatter. So it really just comes down to preference. If you don't mind horizontal recoil, then throw on the compensators. But if you can control the vertical recoil, then why would you ever put an M2 on this thing, you know? But the AKSU is cheap, it's a fun early game gun, and it'll still be like that for a long time, I hope. Overall, I think decent recoil, but it all depends on preference. Next we have the P90. Now, pre 0.2, this thing used to be an absolute laser beam. Now not so much, it has a ton of horizontal recoil. Still not very much vertical, and I do have to mention this has a 50 round mag, so the vertical recoil is going to be a bit higher than something like an AK, so I know this is on the tail end of the list for high recoil in quotation marks, but the P90 still has pretty low recoil. But it's definitely not a precision gun. The amount of horizontal recoil it has definitely makes it hard to control. Until you put a muzzle brake on it, and I really do recommend you put one on if you're going to use a P90 if you can, because it really helps control that spray into something that's more predictable. It doesn't help with the vertical recoil so much, which is fine, it basically has none, but it just kind of shrinks that pattern down a little bit, which is exactly what this gun needs. It's still not the gun it used to be, which is good, because it was overpowered. It was the best gun for CQC, outside of something like a grenade launcher. So, this is a good change. It's still balanced, I feel like. It's still very, very good. Give it a try if you haven't already. But, it definitely doesn't have as much recoil as this guy, the MG36. So, this chart is going to be kind of hard to explain, because the MG36 has 100 rounds, so no matter where I shoot on the target, it'll just go off the top. So I can't map the full recoil pattern for you guys, unfortunately, but I hope that you can see with every new compensator you put on, the pattern becomes a lot more consistent, which is really what you need on the MG36. I think you can see that as soon as you put an M2 compensator, you're going to be a lot more consistent, and it actually makes the MG36 a really, really good gun. If you can control this recoil, it is a scary, scary weapon to fight against, because if the person using it has armor, they can just suppress you, spray you, they can easily abuse your reloads and push you. The pure damage output of the MG36 is better than any gun in the game, so although it does have high recoil, it is still very, very scary. So that's it for the automatic weapons. Oh, well, I guess there is the Scorp. Yep, there it is. I don't know what you guys expected. Pretty much just vertical recoil, no horizontal, terrible damage output, probably because of that tiny barrel and for balance reasons, but yeah. Anyways, moving on. Let's look at some pistols. So here we have the Makarov, and something you're going to notice with the pistols that a lot of the first rounds that are shot are going to actually land below where you're aiming. Now I don't know why this happens, but I do really like it, and you can use it to your advantage. Basically what you're going to want to do with pistols is not just spam it, you're going to want to shoot in short 2 to 3 round bursts, because those are going to be the most on target. After that, you're going to start rising above where you're actually aiming. And this is more pronounced on different weapons. The TTK has probably the most recoil out of any pistol, and it's going to rise the most. The Berta does do this a good bit, so you can spam the Berta. It's probably the most spammable pistol outside of the 5.7, which actually has the most negative recoil, I guess. I mean, look how far down and to the right those shots are right there. So you can seriously spam this pistol and have it be pretty on target. Too bad it doesn't really do much damage. I think it maybe should do more damage versus helmets, because that's what the 5.7 round is decent at. It's really meant to go through soft armor, which Deadside does have some, but the assault armor and heavy assault will not get even bothered by a 5.7 round. But if I remember right, a lot of the helmets that are in Deadside will get penetrated. I'll have to do some research after recording this, but just going off of memory, I think the tactical helmet, or what's it called, operator helmet in game? Yeah, it's really called the LCSH+1. Pretty sure that does get destroyed by a 5.7. And I'm pretty sure the heavy assault helmet, the K6, you guys call it an Alton, it's not really exactly that. Anyways, I think that also gets destroyed by 5.7. We're off topic, but yeah, there it is. You also have the 1911, which surprisingly doesn't have that much recoil. It probably should have the most out of every pistol, but what do I know? I've never shot a 5.7, or a Makarov, or a TTK, so I don't know. And the last thing we're going to take a look at is the VSD and the N4. These are semi-auto guns, so controlling the recoil is kind of a second thought. It's very easy to spam, at least the N4 and beyond target at close range. But look at that VSD recoil. That's pretty serious. I mean, have you seen any of the other guns on this chart be as spread out as the VSD? Yeah, this thing has been balanced really well, in my opinion. It does have very high recoil, but you can easily deal with it, no problem. So, I hope you guys learned something about recoil that you maybe didn't know before. I hope this helps you improve your recoil control on Deadside going into the future. If you want even more information on weapons and armor in this game, I have this playlist right here that should cover pretty much everything. Everything except the videos that aren't released yet. And make sure to subscribe to the channel so you can see the bullet drop video, which is going to be out soon. I'm really excited for that one, to be able to really accurately measure bullet drop over distance. I think you guys are going to enjoy that. And then we also have the handling video, which I hope works out well. We'll see about that. It's something I haven't really tried out before. Anyways, make sure you subscribe to the channel so you can see that when it comes out. Anyway, thanks for watching. See you guys later.